Very good evening to each one of you. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce and Shivadas Law Chambers, we welcome each one of you to this webinar on competition law, on intellectual property, data regulation, and competition law. This session has been organized under the aegis of Banking Finance and Corporate Affairs Expert Committee of BCIC and Shivadas Law Chambers. We'd like to especially thank Dr. K.V. Om Prakash, Chair of the committee and Advocate and Founder Director, Consortia Consultancy, and Mr. Venkatakrishnan, Mentor of this committee and an Executive Vice President and CFO of Tata Hitachi Construction Machinery Company. And also especially thank Mr. Prashant S. Shivadas, Partner Shivadas and Shivadas Law Chamber, for curating this session for the benefit of our members. We like to inform all the members, participants that this is the last series of this awareness session on competition law for this. Today's speaker are Dr. K.D. Singh, Director, Competition Commission of India, Mr. Ganesh Kolegal, AVP, Government Affairs, heading the Government Affairs and Public Policy at Swiggy, and Mr. Sargam Jain, Head Legal of Acer. The session will be moderated by Mr. Prashant Shivadas, who's a partner at Shivadas and Shivadas Law Chamber. On behalf of BCIC, we express our sincere thanks to Dr. K.D. Singh, Mr. Ganesh Kolegal, and Mr. Sargam Jain for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We would also like to thank all the participants for joining today's session. We would also like to acknowledge and thank Shivadas and Shivadas Law Chambers for being a supporting partner for today's virtual session. We request all the participants to follow the basic rule to keep your mic muted at all times as displayed on the screen, and also the webcam options to be so that it enhances the bandwidth and strong, which will help us know any disturbance in the background, and we could be able to clear. Request you all of you to kindly post your questions in the chat box only, and our panelists will be able to address them. May I now invite Dr. K.V. Om Prakash to set the context for today's subject and take it forward. Thanking you all once again. Dr. Om Prakash, over to you.
Thank you, Prithvi. Thank you, Prithvi, for all the support. And I welcome all the participants for yet another series of competition law webinar sponsored by Shivadas and Shivadas Law Chambers. Thank you very much, Prashant, for driving this and getting the versatile wide spectrum of speakers on board. I welcome Dr. K.D. Singh, Director, Competition Commission of India, Mr. Ganesh Kolegal, AVP Swiggy, and Sargam Jain, Legal Head Acer. Welcome, sir. All of you, please welcome for joining us, the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce. We have been instrumental in bringing awareness to our members, and we are a Chamber of Commerce more than 50 years old, and we have been doing this kind of webinars throughout the lockdown also, and we normally used to have physical gatherings, but now we are restricted to the box. Nevertheless, thank you very much for coming on board, and we all have e-commerce veteran Swiggy Ganesh Kolegal here. They are the masters now, ruling the roast. All I can say, e-commerce is really doing well. Everybody believes in that. And of course, technology, back to back. Acer is there, the laptop providers, service. And now that the Competition Commission has established in South, Prashant is just in the spree of giving awareness to our members and letting know the law. To be frank, many of them do not know what is the competition law all about. People still talk about your old MRTP Act, and they still get confused. It has been eradicated after that. So there are a lot of insights in this, and rightly Prashant has brought this to the floor, and today we are here. Today's topics is very relevant in the market, especially when it comes to brand, intellectual property. The interface between competition law and intellectual property is what we are going to touch upon. The regulation of big tech and conflict with data protection and privacy laws vis-a-vis your competition law. So this is the topic we are going to deal with, and the expert panel is available here. And I would like to introduce the panelists one by one. I would go with Dr. K.D. Singh, Director, Competition Commission of India. Dr. Singh is legal professional with vast experience across various sectors of economy and antitrust matters. Singh has domain expertise in public policy matters, particularly in their interface with competition law and policy. He has conducted competition assessment of various policies, statutes, bylaws, model concession agreements, etc. Dr. Singh has vast global exposure. He has attended and made presentations in various international workshops, conferences, seminars, roundtables, training programs organized by various legal forum, legal international legal forum, universities, UN, UNACTAD, ICN, IB, ABA, OECD, US government, etc. During his association with CCI in the last over 10 years, Dr. Singh has mentored various researchers, students pursuing their doctoral, master's, bachelor's course during their internship of CCI. Before joining CCI, Dr. Singh was working as assistant professor law. He taught various disciplines including competition law, corporate laws, labor laws, and international trade. He has also practiced law before various courts, tribunals, regulatory bodies. Dr. Singh holds degree of doctorate in PhD in law, PhD from University of Delhi. Welcome, sir. I welcome you, and it's nice to know that you have been in the teaching fraternity. Love law professors even today. Next, we move on to another panelist, Ganesh Kolegal. He is the AVP managing the corporate affairs, heading the government affairs and public policy at Swiggy, India's largest online food delivery platform. Ganesh Kolegal comes with over 20 years of wide range experience in public policy, public affairs, government relations, policy advocacy, communications. He has been advocating the policy changes and mitigating many issues during his careers. Prior to joining Swiggy, Ganesh was senior manager at Amazon, leading the policy of Amazon OPS, AMZL, ADCI, ARIPL, etc. He has previously worked for Novo Nordisk, VATF, Tide, Horizons, Porter, Novelli, among others. Ganesh is a civil engineer with PGD BA in marketing from Symbiosis. I welcome you, sir. Ganesh, thanks for joining us as a panelist.
Thank you.
Yeah. And next, we move on to the next panelist, Sargam Jain, Head Legal Acer. Over a decade of enriched exposure across the entire spectrum of legal practice to help businesses grow and win in complex environments by guiding them to operate within the parameters of law and regulatory requirements, including domestic and international. He is experienced at working with global teams across multiple time zones and managing complex legal issues. He has expertise in handling complex legal transactions, providing end-to-end contracting support, handling large-scale complex litigation and arbitration both in India and overseas. handled corporate and tax litigation in various states and geographies on industry-specific laws, consumer affairs, besides arbitration in domestic and international geographies. Welcome, Mr. Sargam Jain, the legal head, Azure.
Thank you, Mr. Om Prakash.
Thank you. Welcome, welcome. And our moderator for the session, our star of the program, Prashant S. Shivdas, and very dynamic and advocate, founder of Shivdas and Shivdas Law Chambers. He holds a distinction degree in competition law from Queen Mary University of London. Prashant has advised domestic and international clients on a variety of areas including competition and antitrust law, aviation laws, company and corporate laws, FEMA, FDIs, arbitration and conciliation, electricity law, general contractual laws, drugs and cosmetic laws, labor laws. Prashant has also appeared in over 1,000 commercial litigation and corporate matters and taxation for clients before Supreme Court, Delhi High Court, Karnataka High Court, Competition Appellate Tribunal. Then you have Appellate Tribunal of Foreign Exchange, Debt Recovery, DRT, EPF, CCI, Directorate of Enforcement, Domestic and International Arbitration. Among other hobbies, he is a classical singer over 22 years, a state level cricket player. Welcome, Prashant, and with all these few words and introduction of the panelists, I would like you to take on the session and moderate the panel discussion. Over to you, Prashant.
Thank you, Om Prakash sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you all for joining in. I understand there are lockdown in quite a few places. I hope all of you are safe, healthy. That's the most important thing at this point of time. So I hope all of you are well. And like I always keep saying, I hope all of our domestic issues are under control and we're able to cook and clean better now with the lockdown. I have a great panel with me today. I keep liaising all of my thoughts, all of my new ideas, new theories with Sargam, and it's a great pleasure to have him on board. Ganesh sir is another such person that we keep talking about, politics and economy, etc. So it's great to have him on board. To start off, I think one statement that Mr. Om Prakash made, saying that e-commerce players are number one and information technology players are number one. So that statement should not be made ideally when the CISA is on board. No, but jokes apart, I think this is a great topic. This is in a series of webinars that we've been doing. This is a crunch time for both CCI and for all the players in the market, because we're looking at a dynamic aspect hereafter, and interplay between various players in the market and various regulatory authorities is often something that's been pointed out both by courts and by parties individually. So that's something that we can deliberate upon today. We've got two major aspects. One, of course, is on IP. I wouldn't say that topic has been done and dusted with, because while it did come up maybe sometime in the year 2012-13 or so, it still has a strong foothold insofar as interface with competition law is concerned. And now with big tech, big data regulation, the proposed PDP bill coming in, we've got a number of orders of the authorities of the West and as well as the Competition Commission. So there's a lot for us to debate, and there's a lot for us to talk about. Unfortunately, we may not have that much time. So we'll try and spin this around as much as possible. My special thanks to Dr. KD Singh for joining us today, sir. I understand this is a very busy schedule for you as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And as a caveat, I must point out to all of the participants as well, all of the comments of each of the panelists, including myself, are individual comments only and should not be taken as comments on behalf of any of the organizations that they represent. So let me put that caveat right then and there so that we are a little more free to talk about all of these issues hereafter. Let me also thank BCIC for putting forth all of this together. I know I've been a little hard on BCIC to put all of this together, but I see that the turnout is quite good, and we hope the number only increases as we progress. Now, from one of the two things that we start off with is the interface between IP and competition. And IP by definition would mean that I have something that belongs to me for a certain period of time, and therefore only I am able to monetize out of it. Now, that being said, there have been instances in the past where the fact that you have an IP by itself does not necessarily mean that you can do whatever you want with the IP in terms of royalty rates, in terms of fees, etc. So that is where all of the authorities have come to put their foot down to say that, listen, yes, you have an IP, yes, you have you can monetize out of this, and of course you spend 20 odd years or 30 odd years in trying to bring up that IP and put it together, but that does not necessarily mean that you will have to discriminate amongst various people or price it differently amongst various people. So that is where that role, that line gets diminished between an IP authority and a competition authority, and that's the basic genesis of the controversy for IP and competition law. For everybody to note, there is a provision under the Competition Act, Section 3(5), that does not affect anybody's right insofar as the validity of a patent or a validity of a trademark is concerned. That is not something that the Competition Commission will go into. But at the same time, there have been instances in the past, both in the West and in India, where certain rights that are owned by people have now been made to, in a sense, compulsorily been licensed to some other people. So that is a very touchy subject for a lot of the people. With this background, let me first get Sargam to come on board, because he will have a lot on IP and competition law. Sargam, what happens when you have an IP is that you enjoy that IP. For instance, if you have a patent, you know for a fact that you can enjoy that patent for 20 years and you can monetize on that patent because you've already spent billions of dollars on trying to create that IP. So it is but natural for any entity or for a company to say, let me at least recoup that portion of it, if not a profit, etc. But when an authority like an antitrust authority comes and says, no, you have to limit the price at which you give it out to other people, or you cannot anticipate more than this in sort of revenues from people that you license it out to, does it really hamper growth of that IP?
I would not look at it from that perspective, Prashant. See, there are various aspects to it. One, we can look at it specifically from the competition perspective. We can always look at it from the branding perspective also. As a very simple statement, if I'm being asked that I have to license out my IP, it means I'm having an amazing IP. So that's just a starting point to it. But no, I would not say that if Competition Commission comes into picture and says that there needs to be compulsory licensing, that I cannot enjoy my IP. It's just that I have been given certain parameters within which I'm supposed to enjoy my IP. So definitely my IP, whatever it is, it's a very important IP. It might be something which is being used as a standard setting IP, which is something that we have seen very many times. Like if for example we look at a very classical case of majority of the cell phone companies moving to using the standard charging ports. Now that is where one party's IP was standardized as a SEP, and it was utilized by everyone else. So definitely, as one company, it gives me a right. I can use my IP. At the same time, I have an obligation to share my IP with other entities at a particular royalty, which is being decided on a friend basis. So definitely there would be some sort of restrictions that are there, but the good side of it is that the market becomes much more wider for me. It's a bigger market to which I'm catering to, because if as a company I can sell only to, let's say, 100 odd customers, now with my competitors also joining in and using my same IP, I'm now selling in turn to 1,000 customers, and I'm getting a compulsory licensing fee or a royalty from the other entities that are there in the market. So we can look at it from both sides. One side of the coin says that yes, I am diluting my IP by sharing it with others. On the other hand, I have a bigger market to cater to. A bigger branding is happening for me in the market, and I'm enjoying my rights alongside.
Very diplomatically put, I must say. Thank you. Thank you. Let me bring in Ganesh, sir. And we've spoken a lot about how there is a lot of conflict between various legislations. And at this point of time, I'd like to ask Ganesh, sir, on a very overall perspective. So do you believe that there is some kind of, first of all, do you believe that there is some kind of an interface between IP, competition, data protection, privacy? Because there's a lot of hoopla about this over the last maybe a couple of months or so. In fact, some of them have even gone back to 2019 or so with various privacy policies being updated, etc. But in a case where there is some sort of I would say, interface between each of these maybe say legislations or regulators, how then would you as a company or me as an individual or the commission as an authority draw a line and say, this is where your right stops, this is where this regulatory's rights improves, or this regulatory's rights will come into play? We have various decisions of the top court which says that one regulator should only look at one aspect, and once that aspect has been left done by the regulator, the next regulator can really step in. But where do you draw that line? Is there some kind of a convergence? Over to you, sir. Ganesh, sir, I think you're muted. We're unable to hear you.
Your mic. Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are keeping safe and then healthy in these very trying circumstances. And thank you, BCIC and Prashant, for this opportunity to be part of such a August gathering. And then I look forward to learning from you. I'm a generalist. I'm not an expert like Dr. Singh or Mr. Jain. So from the construct I see it, is there a possibility of a convergence? As an observer, I think maybe in the future, but how far in the future or how near in the future, I don't know. But there is definitely an interface that's possible, because many of these aspects that we have Prashant has articulated overlap over each other. So currently, when the overlaps and the jurisdictions are not very are defined in a particular way, it would be it's a tedious process at this point of time. Maybe in the future, sometime near or far future, there could be a convergence. But I would just like to take the argument a little further. Like we are an evolving society. Innovation has seen its benefit the last decade and a half, or 2 decades, or 2.5 decades, and then we are seeing that the customers have been given a plethora of options in terms of accessing the products and services. So with the innovation that's actually taking at a breakneck speed, and then with the customer's choice and their ability and the convenience and their ability to access products just becoming manifold, and then the speeds in terms of the access with respect to internet, and then the devices, the innovation devices happening. So it's exciting. So it's a huge ecosystem that's actually creating more and more IP or more and more new product services coming up. So that way the world is, I think, is in a very exciting state. And then, of course, the regulators have the obligation and the responsibility to see to it that there is a balance in terms of the way the whole ecosystem has a play around it, in terms of seeing who is providing the service and who is accessing the service, to see to it that there's a kind of an equilibrium, there's a kind of an overall fair play that seems to be there. So from that perspective, I think each of the bodies that are responsible for enabling this are doing their duty. But the overlap, if that can be minimized, and then see to it that any kind of what do you call that, an assessment or an investigation does not become such a long drawn out, it actually stifles the environment in a way, or makes it, for new innovators to think, okay, if I do this, what can I do this, or if I do it in the future, what kind of entanglements I could get into. So from that perspective, I would say the interface has to have a very thin, fine, balance, and that needs to be achieved. So it's a responsibility of everyone, the innovator, the people, who are, pushing the products and services, the people who are having the jurisdictional authority, everyone, it needs to have a very fine, thin, balance, which actually creates an equilibrium. These are my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Let me now bring in Dr. KD Singh, and before I ask sir his first thoughts and comments, just throwing light on what Sargam said on SEP and FRAND. SEP essentially is a standard essential patent, right? And there are certain companies who manufacture very minute chips that need to be used as a standard essential patent across all, let's assume, phones or laptops, etc. So there are certain entities that only do this work. Now, as an SEP, you are the patent owner of that SEP, and therefore you can monetize that SEP without an issue. Now, that is when the concept of FRAND, which means fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory terms, has really been coined by the EU. And we've had instances in the past, before the Delhi High Court itself, where some of these cases of SEPs and FRAND terms have really come up. My question to you, sir, is very straightforward in the sense, yes, there is an interface between SEP and FRAND, and there is therefore an interface between IP and competition law. Post the 2018 decision in Samir Agarwal, sir, has there been a strategy shift insofar as how the CCI really monitors SEP, FRANDs, and the interface between IP and competition law, sir? To you.
Well, I think Samir Agarwal case which you referred to, it does not pertain to that issue. Samir Agarwal case was on a different issue which was decided by the Supreme Court last year. Now, in this case, the issue was whether the person who approaches the Competition Commission of India, should he himself suffer an injury to bring an action before the commission. So, in nutshell, the question was of locus standi of the informant before the commission. And I am happy to say that the
Dr. Singh, sorry, I'm sorry to interject. I am mistaken. It is not Samir Agarwal, it is Bharti Airtel. I'm sorry, my apologies.
Absolutely. So that is what I was slightly perplexed, because I could not find context of Samir Agarwal. Now, Bharti Airtel is a decision given by the Supreme Court of India in the context of some specific facts of the case. Now, what was the case? Let me explain. As we all are aware, when the Jio was entering into the telecom market, the allegation was made by Jio that the incumbent operators, they were not providing points of interconnection for the calls originating from Jio network to terminate on their networks. So therefore, through this so-called cartel arrangement amongst the incumbent telecom operators, entry barrier was created and cartelization was taking place. Now, in this context, the commission prima facie opined that there appears to be a concert amongst the incumbent operators and the matter requires to be investigated. That direction of the commission was challenged before the Bombay High Court, and Bombay High Court, of course, set aside the direction, and finally the matter went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court of India, while upholding the decision of the Bombay High Court, setting aside the order of the commission, made certain observations, and they are very important for us to understand. So what the Supreme Court has said, and this is very important for committee of regulators between the market regulator CCI which has an overarching interface with all sectoral regulators. So CCI's jurisdiction cuts across all the sectors of the economy, and in some of those sectors there may be a sectoral regulator. So therefore, the Supreme Court in this case said that if the sectoral regulator is seized of an issue, then CCI should hold back till the time jurisdictional issues are decided. Now, my understanding of the decision is that it was a very fact-specific decision. Two things follow. One, the sectoral regulator must be seized of that issue, the jurisdictional issue, and only after determination of that issue by the sectoral regulator, CCI can proceed in the matter and can intervene. Now, these two conditions are very important. Now, if you have a look at the statutory scheme under the Competition Act, I think the legislature has provided a very beautiful arrangement in section 21 and 21A. These are the mirrorage provisions. Now, under these provisions, the CCI can consult sectoral regulators and sectoral regulators can consult CCI. So I think a very good modus vivendi, a mode of existence and working has been envisaged by the legislature through these twin provisions. And I think this mechanism must be allowed to operate. Now, what the Supreme Court has slightly disturbed this arrangement is by saying this sequential jurisprudence. So if the sectoral regulator is seized of the matter, then first the jurisdictional issue or the jurisdictional facts will be decided by the sectoral regulator, and then the CCI can take upon the market inquiry. I would only say that we have to appreciate this decision in the light of the statutory scheme, where there is a very healthy mechanism has been provided.
Thank you, sir. Again, my apologies. I should have mentioned Bharti Airtel. To those, I think sir has quite eloquently summarized Bharti Airtel for all of us. So there's no need for me to revisit that that portion of it. But yes, I think sir's point is well taken, that with the Supreme Court decision now saying that the jurisdictional authority should first take a crack at it and then the CCI comes in, I think it is we have to now try and see how IP issues are going to be now checked and balanced out between the CCI and other regulators. So thank you, sir, for your first comments. Let me take Sargam again. And on the point of SEP and FRAND, Sargam, just one question, very simple. Does FRAND really affect or is FRAND a mechanism for any of the antitrust authorities or the competition authorities to put a sort of a line or a Lakshman Rekha on the amount of royalties, for instance, that you may benefit out of the IP?
Okay, so Prashant, just looking into this question, again, I guess it falls back onto that same thing, whether I'm only giving something or I'm receiving something back also. So when we look at it from that perspective, when a particular company who is owner of a patent, that particular company gives its consent that yes, you can use my patent as a standard for the industry, then definitely the company cannot even assume that it can charge whatever royalty that it wants for licensing out that particular patent to other entities or other competitors in the particular market. So definitely we need one basis on which the royalty amount has to be decided. Now, what is that basis? Is FRAND. Fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. If you ask me to differentiate between these three words, I think it would be very tough, because whatever is fair has to be reasonable, and if it is fair and reasonable, then definitely it has to be non-discriminatory. But primarily, this has to be the guiding criteria for CCI to look into and decide whether a particular royalty amount that is being decided between the licensor and the licensee is the right amount or is the reasonable amount or not. So definitely FRAND has to come into picture, specifically in reference to SEPs.
Thank you, Sargam. Slowly moving to our next segment in this, and at times in this segment we will see an overlap between not just data protection and privacy and competition law. We will also see an overlap between IP, privacy, data protection, and competition law, which is a much larger scheme as we know it. Let me bring in Ganesh sir at this point of time, sir. Um, I'll ask you the least controversial question at this point of time, and and, and ask you, how do you bring that balance between innovation, consumer protection, and actively or competitively practicing in the market? So neither of these practices should have an edge over the other, and how do you bring in that really narrow balance between all the three?
It's you said it's a simple question, but the complexities in terms of managing the mechanics of it, is mind-boggling. I'm sure my other friends who are in this ecosystem would agree. I mean, see, why all these questions have come about in the current or in the present context. It's because there is so much of a race in terms of creating IPs or coming out with products and services that is actually gives offers that differentiation within the same segment or within the same set of operations. So that actually determines how a customer is offered that what you call that that proposition where he says, okay, I will choose this vis-a-vis that, or this one is better than that. So that actually creates one beautiful ecosystem where you're fostering more and more innovation and then more and more intellectual properties to be created. That actually drives the economy or advancement in terms of research development within a country, which is very critical for any economic growth or goal to be achieved at this point of time. So how do you balance is something that I think everybody is trying to answer that question. So you have a service, you have a product, and then it has a very attractive proposition. So it gains a lot of traction with respect to consumers coming in. Of course, you have a lot of data generated, and then that data is again used to create more better products and services, which actually make it more convenient for the customers to shop. And then how you have to maintain your what you call the differentiator in the market by becoming the service provider or a product of choice, and at the same time not be so dominant as to actually create imbalances in the market. This is a tightrope walk I think everybody would want to or endeavor to do. At the same time, see to it that the market dynamics are not disturbed, so as to attract the regulatory authorities or the statutory bodies attraction to that particular service that's being dispensed. So how do we do that is something where you're being very honest about it. You don't actually create an ecosystem or foster an ecosystem which actually is very predatory, or you're trying to just stifle your competition, or you're trying to create a dynamic where you're not allowing others to come up. So you have to create that balance where everybody is, because it's such a large market where there's a scope for everybody within that ecosystem, within that space, or within that product and service, to be able to come, participate, and then offer their proposition to the customer, and then allow him to make a choice. So it's incumbent on everybody who's participating in that to create that balance. This is my actually view of that. So how do you do that is something, as you participate in the ecosystem, I think you will figure out. And if you're a fair player, the regulators and then the jurisdictional authorities will also view your activity in a fair manner. That's how I look at it.
Thank you, sir. Let me bring in Dr. K.D. Singh at this point of time, and taking a cue from what Bharti Airtel said, sir. over the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of privacy updates being done. We see that the PDP bill, which is currently pending before the parliamentary committee, proposes a data protection authority. We also know for a fact that a large chunk of the PDP bill has been borrowed from GDPR, and most of the companies who are in India are also GDPR compliant. Sir. That being said, we have a case very recently that has been deliberated upon, wherein although the DPA did not exist, the CCI did take up the matter and started examining on the privacy issues, on the kind of data that is being shared by the entity to its parent, how it is being monetized, etc. Sir, prima facie, do you think the CCI has the jurisdiction to enter into the privacy and data protection sphere without the Data Protection Authority at this point of time? And how do you see it proceeding in the future?
Well, now I think we have to keep 2-3 things very clear in this debate. The first point is that a same set of action may give rise to privacy concern. It may give rise to competition concern. So let us sift the grain from the chaff. Let me put it, privacy has been recognized as a fundamental right by a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court. And these fundamental freedoms can be enforced by the constitutional courts. There is no doubt about this. Now, what is the role of CCI? Now, let us be very clear about it. CCI is not looking into or examining any such infringement of privacy simpliciter from a constitutional lens. That is not its mandate. What the CCI is looking at, now this word privacy, it has come because the whole issue has arisen from a policy update. That was the policy update, privacy policy update. So therefore, you will find this word privacy. But if you otherwise see the intervention, that though this emanated out of some updation of the privacy policy, but CCI has been very looking it from a very limited perspective of competition concern. So therefore, let us be very clear on this issue. Now, privacy is a fundamental right. Aggrieved citizens may enforce their rights before the High Court under 226 or before the Supreme Court against the state or its instrumentalities. I am not sure about the private enterprises, whether they will fall within that jurisdiction or not. But that is a question which the courts will pronounce in due course. Now, what I am making it that privacy and data regulation, now these are the matters for which one personal data protection bill and the community data protection bill, or the non-personal data as you may put it, they are currently at different stages of legislative process. They may come in due process, they may not come, and when they may come, we do not know about them. But surely what we know, that today there is no data protection authority. So to that extent, I think if you see the recent intervention of the CCI, and I can only speak this much at this point of time because the investigations are already on, and the prima facie view and direction of the commission has been upheld by the Delhi High Court. So things stand at that. So my only point would be that what CCI is really looking at is the competition concern. And let me tell you, competition concern may arise from the manner in which data is collected, the data is aggregated, the data is put to use, and the extent of data collection that can give rise to not only exploitative concern vis-a-vis the end consumer, but can also give rise to exclusionary competition concern vis-a-vis the competitors in the market. So therefore, let me clarify. CCI is not examining any privacy infringement. That is a jurisdiction of the constitutional courts, which would look into it. But certainly, if any policy update gives rise to potential anti-competitive concern, I believe the competition agency is well within its jurisdiction to investigate and inquire these aspects from the competition lens in terms of exploitative and exclusionary conduct.
Thank you, sir. I'll trouble you for one more question a bit. I'm going to ask that question to Sargam and then maybe get one or two comments from you on that. Sargam, if you look at how the Act is schemed today, you have sections 3 and section 4 and the criteria for determining various provisions under section 3 and section 4. Some of them are there under sections 19.3 and 19.4, etc. Now, there are various cases and decisions that have said that for you to assess dominance, you don't have to necessarily look at only market share. You have to look at one or two more other conditions as well. One of the conditions there is size and resources of the enterprise. Now, as things stand today, data does not feature as a criterion in that bracket. Now, can one possibly believe that data needs to be included as part of that bracket, or do you see it being included as part of size and resources of the enterprise?
Okay, so Prashant, here what we need to see is first thing the factors that we are discussing about, the factors that have been mentioned under section 19. It's an open-ended clause. So if you look at that particular section, it mentions about a line of factors, and in the end, it specifically says, and any other factor that the Competition Commission of India may find reasonable to be included. So per se, first thing, they have actually left the authority and the power in the hand of CCI to decide what factor that needs to be included. The law came way back, but today we see a market dynamics which is changing on a daily basis. We've got a lot of large players in the market. The way they are doing business is changing on a daily basis. So definitely what is a real factor today might not be a factor tomorrow, and tomorrow we may see a lot of other factors coming in. So that's why I feel the legislature in its wisdom left the factors to be considered as a open-ended thing. So yes, first, data can always be included in case the Competition Commission of India decides, and it should rightly be decided, that data should be a factor, because the biggest of the companies today, they don't have any physical assets. The only asset they have is data. So definitely data plays a very major role in the market today. I will not name any company, but we can see how big companies today are doing business. They don't own anything. They don't own a single shop. They don't own anything else except the data and the algorithms to convert that data into certain further or more meaningful data. That's all that they do. So today algorithm, that big data is the power play in the market that is there. So yes, first thing, data directly can also be included. Second thing, if we look at it even otherwise, a dominant player definitely has got access to more data. If I'm a dominant player in the market with let's say 60 or 70% of the market in my control, then definitely I know the nerve of that 70% of the market. And if I know the nerve of that much of market, it means I've got more data related to all my customers. So today, in case a new entrant wants to enter into that same market, first thing, the new entrant does not have any data with it. It will take that new entrant some time, maybe some years, to gather that much of data to develop its own algorithms, which is typically the IP that is there. So for a new entrant, it's as good as it amounts to an entry barrier, because the new entrant cannot survive in a market where he does not know about its customers the way a dominant player knows about them. Now, the way the e-commerce industry is moving, typically, we see everything is about cross-selling. Today, I purchase one thing, the e-commerce players that are there tell me that I should purchase that other thing also. Now, a new entrant cannot actually have the data and the algorithms to kind of, prompt that what all other products can be purchased. So that is where I feel data definitely plays an important role. And it also plays an important role in terms of today's market that is there. Today's market that is there is fast changing. So only and only because of the data and the reading on the basis of that data, today's bigger companies know their customers way better than a lot of other players that are there in the market. So tomorrow, to stay relevant, they only and only rely on this data. So even if we look at it from the longevity perspective, data is an important factor. And yes, CCI, I think maybe tomorrow or in coming time, definitely we'll look at it. Dr. Singh is a better judge of that. But definitely data is important. It is a relevant factor.
Dr. Singh, your comments on this portion, sir. If data should be included as a factor in the act itself, or can it be deemed as any other factor?
Now, let me mention here itself that our law is futuristic. It has been couched and drafted in very wide terms, and as has been pointed out, it already has a residuary clause. Now, tomorrow the technologies may change. Instead of data, some new word or new phrase may come. We do not and should not need on keep on amending the statute. That will be unnecessary, make the law unwieldy. Because when the law is couched in such a broad term and it gives flexibility to the regulator to consider any other factor, I really do not believe there is any case to insert data specifically. That is an exercise which will unnecessarily create confusion. Now have a look at the Indian Contract Act. 1872, it was enacted. But the courts recognize that yes, a contract can be concluded on telephone. It can be concluded on email. It can be done on SMS. It can be done on WhatsApp. It can be done on Signal. It can be done on this. It can be done on that. Do we need to amend the law? The answer is no. And let me also update the all the participants that this issue was also deliberated by the Competition Law Review Committee, which examined the entire law, and there was a working group on new age technology. And what they have said, and I just would read. Section 19(4) of the Competition Act provides a list of factors that CCI may consider while inquiring whether an enterprise enjoys a dominant position. This list is inclusive and broad enough to cover instances where control over data may pave the way for dominance and its abuse. Further, Section 19(4)(b) expressly refers to resources of the enterprise, as you have mentioned, as a factor for determining dominant position. Such resources may include data. Therefore, Section 19(4) is also broad enough to include control over data as a factor for determining dominance, and there is no need for an express reference to control over data or specialized assets as a factor. Further, there is no need to include express reference to the term network effects in Section 19(4), as it is already worded in an inclusive manner and provides CCI with enough flexibility to consider such factors while determining the dominant position of an enterprise. So I must mention that already CCI in the Google case, and I'm talking about the previous Google case on search bias, where CCI did impose a penalty upon Google. There, the argument was taken that there is no sale or purchase because Google is providing search services for free. Now, as you all would aware, there is nothing like a free lunch. So maybe we are not paying any monetary consideration, but we are paying our attention through eyeballs, through footfalls, our profiling, the various permissions. So I believe it will be a cliche if I say the big data is the new oil today. But I must mention that already the law was tested in the Google case. And there itself, the big data as a consideration was recognized by the CCI in that case. Now, the other point which has been made, that the incumbents have the huge data, they are sitting over the piles of data, and a newcomer will come that will act as an entry barrier. I do not know. I was wondering, to draw an analogy from a brick and mortar economy perspective. You are an airline. So there are 5 and 6 and 10 airlines. They are using an essential facility, that is the airport. Now, obviously, airports are essential facility. There is no doubt, because you cannot replicate such facility in metro cities. So therefore, they conventionally, traditionally, and from antitrust perspective, they are held to be essential facilities which are bound to share with the users on, again, friend terms, fair, reasonable. Now, this friend is not a jumla for standard essential patents. It is for everyone. Why only? Every dominant enterprise has to act in a fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory term. Let me put it this way. Of course, this word has been monopolized, if I may use that word, by the standard essential facility industry. But otherwise, from a competition regulator's perspective, from the competition law's perspective, every dominant undertaking has got certain special obligations to act in a fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory term. The second point which I would say, and that remains untested today, whether big data is an essential facility. Now, if there is an incumbent, and he is of course sitting on a piles of data, it's the the person has just pointed out. So a new entrant in his lifetime cannot compete and acquire that traction. He will not even survive. Do he need to wait till the time he acquires the data on his own? Or can the incumbents can be asked to share their data in an anonymized form or in whatever way, subject to their mutual bilateral negotiations or royalty and other considerations? Now, I think that is an issue which community data or non-personal data must address. And pending that and concurrent to that, the antitrust regulators, I believe, can also discuss and deliberate whether big data is an essential facility. If that being so, then the new entrants in the market, they need not wait to acquire and collect that much of data to be in a competitive position. I think we will be waiting till the kingdom comes, and that will not be, because already network effects have kicked in. Consumers are locked in, and in such a scenario, I think with such a network effects, it will be very difficult, for well nigh impossible, for any new entrant to effectively compete. So therefore, I think this is a matter which I'm sure the legislature is looking into through the community data bill. And I'm very sure that the antitrust regulators across the world, when there is a talk of regulation of big tech, they will also see what role in this the competition agencies can have to regulate big tech and big data over which they are presiding.
Thank you, sir. Now that we've come to this stage where we're now talking about non-personal data as well. One question that came to my mind, and that obviously resides in the minds of those entities or those companies that have struggled and come up to the level that they are today. Let us assume, for instance, there is some kind of non-personal data that is being generated through the AI of that entity, to the artificial intelligence or to the algorithms of that company, and they generate non-personal data. Now, this non-personal data can be used for a number of reasons. They can be sent to their R&D labs for better products for tomorrow. They can be sent to their parent entities for sharing, etc. Now, eventually, all of these NPDs and the algorithms ultimately create some kind of an IP. Now, can any authority, let alone a competition authority, can any authority come to that kind of an entity and say, listen, I need you to share this data with a new entrant in the market? Can any authority do it? It's a very simple question.
And I guess the answer is equally simple. But let me first mention that there is a fundamental difference between the MRTP Act and the Competition Act. That's very important. In MRTP, the dominance or size per se was condemned. The monopoly, the dominance, the threshold, monopoly or dominance per se was banned under the MRTP Act.
Correct.
Under the competition law, the dominance per se is not bad. Now, this is a very paradigm change in the legislative approach. So now you can grow big. There is absolutely no problem. You collect data, generate data, and share data, utilize data. I must mention there is absolutely no problem to the extent that is done in a manner which is not violative of the law. So that is the first thing. So becoming big, collecting data within the bounds of the law, that is in a fair manner and non-discriminatory manner. To that extent, there is absolutely no problem. So where is the problem? The problem is when you abuse your dominant position. So that is the only problematic part. When the abuse kicks in. Now, if a dominant incumbent accumulates data through artificial intelligence or through this or that means, no problem. You collect that data in a manner consistent with law. You can share it with your group companies, with the outsiders, with anybody, no problem. The only thing would be your conduct has to be fair and non-discriminatory. Now, these are the two commandments which every dominant undertaking is to be guided. So therefore, now we are coming to your simple question. Whether the big data, can any authority direct? The answer is, if this big data has acquired the status of an essential facility in the gig economy, and as the markets are evolving, I would not make any value judgment, particularly when these matters have not been tested before the tribunals, courts, and the regulators. But purely from my own perspective, I believe if we compare big data with the conventional essential facilities, to my mind, not only the antitrust authorities, but even the proposed data regulators under the NPD, they may direct sharing of such community data in an anonymized form, subject, of course, to the mutual negotiations of the parties. So I believe the data, who is the owner, custodian of the data? It is the citizens. They are the sovereigns. They possess the data, not by the incumbents. They have only collected. But who is the owner of data? That is the question. And it must be used for public good. And there is no greater good than public good. So therefore, the answer to your simple question would be that such data can be and must be and is proposed to be under the NPD. And I believe there is a good literature also of the antitrust which indicate in this direction.
Thank you, sir. Taking a cue from what Dr. KD said about the use of data to monetize, let me bring in Ganesh, sir, because I've ignored him for some time, so I'll try and bring him back for the time being. So data aggregation is something that a lot of people are talking about. Now, this data aggregation is, from my understanding, from a very limited understanding, is essentially internalizing all of the data either amongst enterprises, the hoard of enterprises that people have. It could be between a parent and a subsidiary, or a parent and an affiliate, or it could be from the company to the R&D segments, etc. Now, it is a given that sometimes data aggregation may lead to dominance, and like we've seen now, dominance itself is not bad, but abuse of that dominance is. What do you feel will be the repercussions of such data aggregations on the entities if watchdogs come after these entities for data aggregation?
Very interesting question. You didn't ignore me, Prashant. I was enjoying, Dr. Singh's perspective and then learning a lot from it. So thanks. So data dominance or data aggregation is, like Dr. Singh said, per se is not bad. So it again comes to letter and spirit in terms of the conduct of the business. And then when the PDP bill and then with all its statute, the statute comes with all its rules and regulations, where it puts when it actually clearly defines the ownership, the fiduciary, and the way data has to be treated, and then all those stored, accessed, everything. I think there'll be a lot of clarity. In current ecosystem, it's still evolving, like our other speakers have been saying. So aggregation of data will be there as innovation and the new technology, new services which actually collect more data and then use that data to synthesize and then come out with more products and using various things like AI, ML, etc. So per se, I feel data aggregation can lead to whole lot of innovation, which I think the world definitely deserves. And then the current business environment, or the way the people's desire for product and then the innovation comes about. So your dominance comes in, like Dr. Singh has been saying, the letter and spirit again I come in. You use the aggregated data as your first mover advantage or having a preeminence in the market. You use that to stifle other players coming in or other participants in that environment to be not able to measure up or give that kind of quality of service. And then by the time they aggregate data and then they can compete with you in some reasonable way, if that is stifled or stopped, and then there is there are a lot of hurdles for that. That, I think, in my personal opinion, would be detrimental to the whole ecosystem, getting nurtured. So it would be mindful of every player who's in the ecosystem, who are a participant, to see to it that, when the rules and then the statutes come in, if they are, it's obligatory for them to share these data sets in an anonymized way. I mean, like it's been said before, if there could be any monetary consideration for sharing that is actually, envisaged, then that could also give that little bit of impetus or incentive for sharing. After all, data is there to be used to, create, more innovation and then more products and services. So personally, I feel, since every day our data is being collected by somebody for something or the other, it could be personal or whatever, in whatever way. So as an individual, I would want, whatever data I've given out, I should get better products and services, which makes my life that much better, and for my time and for my data being given out. So yes, like you said, aggregation is not bad, but aggregation to create a environment which actually stops others from competing is not the right way. This is how I look at it.
Thank you, sir. When you mentioned monetizing as an incentive for companies, I could see Dr. Singh giving a slight smirk there. Sure.
I must mention that competition, IPR, and innovation, they do not cross-cut each other. That will be a misconception. The competition law also drives dynamic efficiency. That is the innovation we are talking about. Now, it is bad only when, as I mentioned, a dominant incumbent uses that for leveraging in the associated or not associated verticals. Then the difficulties arise from an antitrust perspective. But if you use data for a better user experience, And you also, as Ganesh has correctly said, that not in a manner which is detrimental to the other market participants. I think there can be no quibble, and that is the way forward to go by the big daddies sitting over big data.
Thank you, sir. I have one common question for both you and Mr. Ganesh. We all know that there is a huge iOS versus Android battle that's happening in the EU, and every day the EU commissioner comes out with some statement or the other about this kind of a battle. For those of you who are unaware of this, in a very simple notion, this is a battle where I wouldn't want to name companies, but this is a battle where the major iOS operator or the operating system supplier is somebody who has really on the verge of compliance with GDPR, has changed their privacy policy, therefore forcing a lot of the existing players in the market who are on the app system of that iOS player to really leave because they are unable to comply with those privacy policies. Now the player says, the iOS player says that I'm doing this because I need to be compliant with GDPR. But on the other hand, the players on the app store say that you're denying us market access. To me, as a person who's really been involved with competition law for quite some time, I know for a fact that the denial of market access portion of it should really be handled by the competition authorities. But when a player says that I'm doing this to be compliant with another law, what is your take on this, sir, for both you and Mr. Ganesh? Anyone can start. I leave it to you.
Dr.
Now,
Singh, yeah.
Okay. Now, this is very interesting and I must say very tricky question. That your conduct, you say, is modulated due to some statutory requirement. And when you comply with that requirement, you are accused of violating another law. Now, as of today, fortunately in India, we do not have any data protection law. So CCI has already ordered investigation into this matter of another operating system, not the one which you have referred to, and that matter is currently pending investigation before the DG. Now, certainly, as I mentioned, that as far as the Indian legal system or ecosystem is concerned, currently that issue is not there. Now, certainly this issue will have to be addressed by the European regulators. Now, it needs to be seen whether what is being claimed that we comply with GDPR and therefore this is an unintended consequence of the regulation which is happening in another market or another authority's work. I think that issue needs to be very carefully analyzed. In general, as a general principle of law, as we say, the law cannot prejudice any man or woman. So if somebody is doing a conduct in compliance with the law, certainly that person cannot be condemned on that count, unless there are other factors. So I am not much aware of the details, what is going on in the Europe, but as far as the India is concerned, there is no regulation on data protection today through a statute.
Thank you, sir. Ganesh, sir, to you, sir, the same question. Your thoughts?
Very interesting, actually, what you call that dilemma, I would say, in a way. And Dr. Singh had said in his opening remarks, testing of the law. So this would be a very, fit case for testing of the law. And like how we, learned from GDPR and then have come out with our bill that's under consideration. So similarly, maybe, other, systems or laws that are evolving, we look at this and learn and then see how they can put together a framework that would actually, mitigate such, circumstances that may arise. So like how in NPD, we came out with a framework and others are going to learn from it. So I think it's like one man's medicine is somebody else's something. So it's a situation where this has happened, and I think such kind of what you call that interesting case points will come out. I won't say case laws because it's still yet to become one. So points will come out which will test both the regulators as well as the lawmakers to see how such what do you call that creative interpretation can be mitigated. This is how I can say without commenting on the specific merits of that.
Thank you, sir. Before we move on, Prithvi, I'm not sure if there are any questions on the chat box or if somebody has sent you questions personally. Are there any questions?
There's one question from Ram Bala. Can I read it out?
Sure.
But I don't know, is it something personal? I'm not sure. If compulsory licensing is possible, what is holding India from enforcing Bill Gates Group from sharing IP for COVID vaccine with India?
None of us are IP. I would say fanatics here. But on that portion, if compulsory licensing is possible, Mr. Bala, the question really needs to be addressed by an authority who's able to do it. Currently, compulsory licensing in India has not been done except by way of agreements. It has not been done by courts. But if that is possible, yes, courts can actually compulsorily license various agreements in India. In fact, I don't think we need to go all the way to the Bill Gates Group for them to share the IP. I think it is possible even with the current manufacturers of a Covaxin or a Covishield or something like that, for them to share across all of these data or compulsory license out to every other manufacturer so that the vaccines are given out free of cost. In fact, that is something that even maybe the commission can take up and address that issue. But to that limited extent, it is possible, but we need to see which court really takes that up to do it in that sense. I see another question from
I
Mr.
have one small clarification, Prashant, if it's possible on this.
Sure.
Dr. Singh mentioned that for the greater good, okay, could that be actually invoked and then said in such unprecedented catastrophic times, the greater good can be invoked and then requested, okay, like how contract manufacturing is given by the IP holders, but can the sharing of the same happen with the greater good clause being invoked?
Now, all I can say that we have an Office of Patent Controller precisely for this purpose, to grant compulsory licensing. So I do not think it is appropriate for me to comment upon compulsory licensing, because that is a jurisdiction which is appropriately vested in patent controller. And as and when any application seeking compulsory license is moved, I'm sure they will decide it in accordance with their statute, that is the Patents Act, and keeping the larger good of the community.
Thank you, sir. Before I take in Mr. Bala's second question, which I would probably like him to ask because I'm not able to understand the language, there is one question of Mr. or Miss Mainak Pani. If data is shared by big players in an anonymized manner and one of the players misuses or abuses it, is there a risk that authorities might face more difficulties in catching the real culprit? Sir, I think the question is directly to you, sir, Dr. Singh.
Can you just again reconstruct the question?
Sure. The question is, if data is shared by big players in an anonymized manner and one of the players misuses or abuses it, is there a risk that the authorities might face more difficulties in catching the real culprit?
Well, I am sure there is a problem with the construction. Now, first is that somebody is sharing data, which is big. Then the person with whom it is shared, he is abusing. So I'm really a bit confused. So I won't be able to.
No, I think this will be on the premise that both the players are equally dominant in the market.
Well, the joint dominance or collective dominance is not recognized under the Indian competition law. That legal position is very clear, barring the group dominance. If they are group companies, then certainly that type of dominance can be examined. But if they are structurally unrelated entities, then, well, I'm afraid that like you take the example in the Amazon, Flipkart, the CCI has said that nobody is dominant. The market is, one is exerting a countervailing balance upon the other. So neither Flipkart nor Amazon can be said to be dominant. And that is exactly what the commission said. And the matter was closed. But yes, dominance may not be, but then there is section 3(4). That is the vertical agreements. For vertical agreements, you need not be dominant or a monopolist. For that, what you need to, if I may loosely say, you need to have some sort of market power, which is, or maybe sort of dominance. So therefore, I think there is no regulatory gap, and conducts, if it is not under 4, it can be done under 3(4).
That was my next question to you, sir. If not 4, then what? I think you answered that question quite well. Mr. Bala, if I can ask you to please read out or elaborate your second question a little more, because I'm not able to grasp the question quite clearly. Mr. Bala? I don't know if you've been given access to speaking.
Yeah, Rupa, can you unmute Bala to address?
Yeah, I have done that.
Yeah. Bala, you could go ahead with the question. In meantime, you can, Prashant, you can read the next question.
Sure. I have one from Ronak, and this question has been partly answered, but I'll still read out the question. I understand that in the interest of competition, the CCI may have jurisdiction to have access and investigate data. How does one strike a balance between the fundamental right to privacy and data to be accessed by the CCI? For example, if the CCI were to access some personal data in the process of its investigation, and I have the fundamental right to have that protected, how does a balance be struck? Before I ask Dr. Singh to answer that, so there are various provisions under the Act and the regulation and rules itself that speak about confidentiality. In fact, very recently, the Commission has come out with the confidentiality amendments, proposed amendments that they've asked for comments from the public as well. Now, if there are any data that you're sharing or the data that has been taken up by the CCI during their investigation, you can request for the data to be made confidential. Data that any submissions made before CCI can be in 2 forms: a confidential version and a non-confidential version. Therefore, the confidential version only is with the members and the CCI, and the non-confidential version goes to everybody else. That apart, I leave the question to Dr. Singh to answer if he has anything else.
Very pertinent question. What happens? Now, this slightly is a different question relating to privacy, which the CCI orders. Here, the charge is upon the CCI. Let me put it this way. During the course of investigation and inquiry, if some personal data has been accessed, how am I right to privacy? Now, so it is a general question. Let me now generalize it. When the regulators, law enforcement agencies, when they conduct investigation, inquiries, they come across various data. And in that data, if some personal data unrelated with the investigation comes across, how my data and my privacy can be ensured. So let us put it this way. So it is nothing with competition law. It's a very generalized question. And it can happen that you may give something to the courts. Now, when you file a writ petition, you give your details, your mobile number, your address, your email. Now, that can happen. That charge can happen to everyone. Now, let me answer this and assure. For example, investigations when they are conducted. Particularly, let me give an example. In cartel cases, we mount dawn raids. So during the course of the dawn raid, the commission collects the hard disk and the data is cloned and then it is analyzed in the forensic lab. Now it may happen that a lot of personal details may be contained in the hard disk. Now the question is, what will happen to that data? That may be very damaging if it is personal data and has nothing to do with the matter under investigation. Now Prashant has already, I think, responded to by saying that if this type of data is accessed incidentally during the course of investigation or inquiry, now firstly, parties themselves submit the data. So they themselves will take good care. This problem can arise particularly in the context of dawn raids, search and seizure operations. So this issue is accentuated only in those contexts. Otherwise, if I am issuing a probe letter to you and I'm asking you certain details, there is no reason for you to part with your personal details. Absolutely no reason. You will only respond what is the request. And the request is in the context of inquiry, that is for the purpose of that. So if I am doing something for the purpose of that, no offense can be taken. And even the confidentiality itself is not applicable if some data is used for the purposes of that. Section 57 of the Act, very clear on this. Such data can be used for the purposes of the Act or for the purposes of any other law for the time being in force. Now the only limited question is, I have conducted a dawn raid, search and seizure of Prashant's computer, collected his hard disk, sent it forensic lab, and I came across that there is some personal data. Now, of course, this is a very valid concern. Prashant has answered that it can be claimed confidential by saying that it is unrelated and therefore it should be kept apart. That is absolutely one way to go. And the other way to go would be to give comments to the CCI's confidentiality in public consultation paper and highlight this issue. It's a very important issue.
Very well put, sir. Very well put. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And my request is that we are already overshot the time. So
yes,
I would not be available for more than, I think, 1 minute or so. So if you please excuse me.
No, I think yes, I think we will also wrap up. So any other questions, perhaps you can send it to us over email and we'll try and ask everybody to respond to that email. Before sir leaves, let me get
Shant, Rambala here. Can I complete on my question there? Which I have
sure. Please do, sir.
So my question was in the context of the reach available with the technology. So the technology has got huge reach advantage. So in that context, various types of data can be collected. So is there any limit set on the data collection in terms of the latitude of the personal data that is collectible, or the profiling through click choices, or on a need-to-know basis, or such things?
Currently in India, sir, there is no such limit that has been set. Of course, the Competition Commission has no role to play in that. But tomorrow, eventually, if the Data Protection Authority does come into picture, they may impose some kind of a limit that is for the world to see tomorrow. But as of now, there is no limit on the data that can be termed either that can be collected either personal or non-personal data. So we'll have this discussion a little more, but let me get closing comments from Dr. Singh before we can
Sure, just one last question to Dr. Singh here.
Sure.
Data collection can happen organically or inorganically between contracting parties. Okay. Now, am I allowed to collect data by law from competitors' third-party service provider, such as through payment gateways?
So the question, Dr. Singh, the question is an entity allowed to collect data from third parties, from third-party vendors of competitors, let me put it that way, through gateways?
Well, I don't think this I can answer that question. There are various sectoral regulations by RBI and concerned operators, but I don't have to say anything on this.
Mr. Bala, the answer to that question lies again with the potential DPA that may come in, because there are a lot of personal, in fact, sensitive personal information that you upload on a gateway, and that is something for the DPA to administer and monitor. Dr. Singh, your closing comments, sir, before we can relieve you. I'm so sorry to keep you holding.
My closing comments, of course, would be that I congratulate the Bangalore Chamber of Commerce and Industry to bring these three very critical areas of IPR, competition, and innovation to discuss and deliberate in a very practical, frank, and pragmatic manner. So I think there is no conflict that we should disabuse between IPR and between competition. The ultimate aim of IPR and competition law, amongst others, is to drive innovation through dynamic efficiency. So we are not cutting each other. We are supplementing and complementing each other. And I would also suggest for future that when such type of discussions, one expert from the IPR should also be there on the panel. So that would give you a fuller spectrum instead of me doing the bidding for patent controller or you doing something else. I think we are not appropriately placed to respond to that as well. So I think slightly that point we can in future consider, but otherwise I would make this by submitting that absolutely we all are in harmony and we are acting in a committee of regulators for the greater public good.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a great pleasure personally for me, and I'm sure for everybody else to listen to you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to further interactions with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. It was wonderful being with you on the panel.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. It was wonderful having you here, and thanks for recognizing the BCIC for this appropriate awareness program. We would take your suggestion of including another panelist, especially the expert from IPR side also. Next time when we do, we will definitely keep this in mind. Thank you very much, sir, for your opening statement and various insights about the data protection and privacy laws. And I would also thank Mr. Ganesh Kolegal for having come here and shared his views on various topics, and also Mr. Sargam Jain from Acer to also share his thoughts, and thank everybody who has been all the way from 3 o'clock, has spent the value, what I can say is value added session here, and not last but the least, Mr. Prashant for driving a wonderful panel discussion and moderating fantastically and bringing out all the good points that needs to be addressed, and all these topics are burning today. Of course, today there are not much of laws and regulation which governs privacy. If you see some US contracts, you normally find some data privacy laws in the UK, US, but in India, yeah, we need to really scale it up. But do people do sign those agreements without knowing the intricacies? With this, I would also thank the BCIC Secretariat, Mr. Prithvi, Rupa, and Mr. Sham for having done a wonderful job in bringing all the participants here and all the members of BCIC to join this session. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Dr. Om Prakash sir, now since it's a virtual session, we like to acknowledge the speakers. We will have a virtual presentation, and we'll ensure that these presentation reaches to their respective offices in due course of time. Now let us have our national anthem played. I request your kind attention.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उज्जल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you.